is homework on your intro to trig. So, in the lecture, we talked about SOHCAHTOA and we went over a few problems regarding that. So, in today's homework, you guys have to use SOHCAHTOA in order to solve for size and angle measurements. Number one, so you guys have to use SOHCAHTOA, which is sine, cosine, and tangent, in order to solve for angle measurements or side length. So right here, we have an angle measurement. Now, when you solve for this, be in the perspective of that angle measurement, and that would help you to locate which trig identity we have to use to solve for this. So this side is the opposite side to the angle measurement. So this is what you call theta, you guys. This is theta, and that's an angle measurement. So O represents the opposite side. This side right here is adjacent to theta, which is this angle measurement, and 13, the one across from the 90-degree angle, this one is your hypotenuse. So when you take a look at this, you must ask yourself, well, where is there information? Well, there's information on the adjacent side, and there's information on the hypotenuse side. So in order to solve for theta, we have to use the one that has an A and an H. So that's cosine. So cosine of theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. And then to solve, we have to isolate that. So that means we need to eliminate cosine. In order to do that, you gotta take cosine inverse to both sides. This cosine to the -1 power, you guys, that's called cosine inverse. These cancel. So we're going to get cosine is equal to cosine, oh no, not cosine. Theta is equal to cosine inverse, 12 over 13. And then in your calculator, do cosine inverse of 12 over 13. And for some, if you have a Texas Instrument, it's second, and then if you see the word cosine, C-O-S, you'll see it'll have cosine inverse of 12 divided by 13, and you get 22.6 degrees. Now, for those of you that are not sure how to do it, I'm going to bring up Desmos right now. So here's Desmos, you guys. Now, in order to do it on Desmos, what you need to do is, so in the bottom left, there's a keyboard. So you're going to have to bring that keyboard up. And then where it says functions, you have all these functions. And if you did cosine inverse of 12 divided by 13, you would also get 22.6. Now, be careful because your notation has to be in degrees. So if you guys check here where it says graph settings, make sure this says degrees, not radians, okay? Make sure it says degrees, because I think default it says degrees or radians, so you want to make sure it's degrees. But that's how you guys use it for Desmos if you don't have a calculator offhand. All right, next one, number 2. Okay, so in the perspective of this angle, this side is the opposite side. This side right here is the hypotenuse because it's across from the 90-degree, right? And this side is adjacent. So there's information at the O and the A, which is tangent for TOA. So tan of theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. And now let's solve. So I'm going to take the tan inverse of both sides, because then these are going to cancel. So then we're left with theta is equal to tan inverse of 4 over 13. So insert this into your calculator or on Desmos. 4 divided by 13, tan inverse of 4 divided by 13, which is 17.1 degrees. Okay. Number 3. In the perspective of this angle, this side is the opposite, this side is adjacent, and this side is the hypotenuse. So there's information at A and H, which means I'm going to be using cosine. So cosine of theta is equal to 6 over 9. Take the cosine inverse of both sides. These cancel. Oops, that really canceled. And we get theta is equal to cosine inverse 6 over 9. Put that in your calculator or in Desmos as I showed you, and you should get 48.2 degrees about. Okay. Number 4. In the perspective of this angle, this side is opposite, this side is adjacent, and this side is hypotenuse. So there's information at O and the A, so we're going to be using tangent. Tan of theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. Take the tan inverse of both sides. These cancel. So we get theta is equal to tan inverse of 11.9 over 10. Put this in your calculator or in Desmos, and your final outcome should be 49 or 50 degrees, 50.0 because it rounds up. Okay, number 5. Perspective of this angle. This side is opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. You're going to be using O and A, which is tangent again. So tangent of theta is equal to 7.7 over 14. Take the tan inverse to both sides. These cancel. Theta is equal to tan inverse of 7.7 over 14, which roughly comes out to be 7.7 divided by 14, 28.8 degrees. Okay, number 6. Theta, angle measurement in the perspective, so this side's adjacent, opposite, hypotenuse, and H, so that's cosine. So cosine theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Take the cosine and inverse to both sides, and we get theta is equal to cosine inverse of 4 over 5, which is roughly 36.9 degrees. Seven. So in the perspective of this angle, opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. So A and H, so that's cosine. So cosine theta is equal to 4.4 over 11. So I'm going to skip a step, okay? So into your head, take cosine inverse to both sides. So you should have this, which is roughly, put that in your calculator, cosine inverse of 4.4 divided by 11, 66.4 degrees. 8. There's theta. This side is opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So we're going to be using TOA, which is tangent. Tan theta is equal to 3 over 3. So take tan inverse to both sides. So we're going to have theta is equal to tan inverse of essentially 1. And tan inverse of 1 is 45 degrees on the dot. Alright, so that's 1 through 8. Alright, now you guys have to find side lengths. So it's the same process, so we have to select the angle measurement and then go from there. So here's this angle. Be in the perspective of this, so this side's opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So that means we're using A and H because there's information there. So that means we're going to be using cosine. So cosine of 37 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Now at this step, you guys, you have to cross multiply to solve. Cross multiply. X times cosine 37 is x cosine 37. 1 times 11, 11. Now we need to solve for x. So in order to do that, we need to divide both sides by cosine 37. So x equals 11 over cosine 37, which means that's roughly around, so 11 divided by cosine 37. Not cosine inverse of 37, 11 divided by cosine 37. And you should have gotten round to the nearest 10, 13.8. And x is a side length, not a degree. Alright, 10. Alright, here's the angle measurement. In the perspective of that, we got opposite and adjacent and hypotenuse. So that means we're using tangent. So tan of 32 is equal to opposite over adjacent over 1. So we got to cross multiply. 1 times x is just x. 13 times tan 32 is just 13 tan 32, which is roughly 13 tan 32. 8.1. It's around 8.1. 11. In the perspective of this angle, this side is opposite, this side's adjacent. Hypotenuse, so we're going to be using tangent again. Tan of 50.1 is equal to opposite over adjacent. Put this over 1 and cross multiply. 1 times x is x. 5 times tan 50.1 is 5 tan 50.1. Put that in your calculator. 5 tan 50.1, which is going to be 6.0. You're going to round. Yep. Alright, 12. In the perspective of this, we got opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So A and H for cosine. So cosine of 60 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Put this over 1. Cross multiply. 1 times x is x. 11 times cosine 60 is 11 cosine 60, which is roughly 11 cosine 60. 5.5. Oh, on the dot. Last 4. Angle measurement. So in the perspective of the angle measurement, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So we're going to be using tangent. Tan of 41 is equal to opposite 4 over adjacent x. Put this over 1 and cross multiply. X times tan 51 is x tan 41. Sorry, x tan 41. 1 times 4 is 4. Isolate the x, so that means we need to divide both sides by tan 41. So x is going to equal to 4 over tan 41. Put that in your calculator. 4 divided by tan 41, which is going to give you 4.6 about. 14. In the perspective of this angle, we got opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. There's information at O and H, so that means we have sine. So sine of 57 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Cross multiply. So we get x sine of 57 is equal to 1 times 10.8, which is just 10.8. Need to isolate x, so divide both sides by sine 57. Put that in your calculator, and you should have gotten 10.8 divided by sine 57. 12.9. 15. In the perspective of this angle, this side's opposite, this side's adjacent, this side's hypotenuse. So O and H again, so sine of 37 is equal to x over 10.3. Put this over 1, cross multiply. 1 times x is x, 10.3 times sine 37, 10.3 sine 37. So put that in your calculator, 10.3 times sine 37. 6.2. And lastly, 16. In the perspective of this angle, this side's opposite, this side's adjacent, this side's hypotenuse. So we're going to be using A and H for cosine. So cosine of 47 is equal to x over 3. Put this over 1. Cross multiply. 1 times x is x. 3 times cosine 47 is 3 cosine 47, which is roughly around 2.0. So hopefully this helps you guys out, and good luck, okay?